Also looking at digital transformation and upgrading our processes and equipment. So CDEMA, how do we support? How do I, as the senior programming officer for telecommunications, support CDEMA itself? I do that through maintenance of their equipment, the equipment for CDEMA itself. Make sure that it's ready to use, especially for deployments. I help with the create the standard operating procedures, policies, conduct training, support, and inventory management, etc. At the national level, we assist with the development and updating of emergency telecommunications plans, provide technical support and advice, testing telecommunication systems across the region, and again, providing training for the national disaster officers. On the regional level, we support the regional response mechanism. Now, the regional response mechanism is not only made up of the teams that you see here, but basically all 19 member states, because all of our specialists are drawn from within the member states. But the main teams that we deploy would be, as listed here, the Rapid Needs Assessment Team, CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit, the CARICOM Operational Support Team, the CARICOM Damage Assessment and Coordination Team. In supporting those teams, we provide the equipment for them, the training, the logistics and general support, and regional and international support as required. We relate with a number of NGOs who also support them when they are deployed. Our network consists of core and secondary users. As you can see, it's a pretty wide network. The Regional Coordination Center, as you can see in the center of the entire network, is where we coordinate all the activities for the disaster management, for the management of any disaster or hazard that occurs within the region. But we are also assisted by the RSS, the sub-regional focal points, which we get to in the next slide. Other specialized agencies, for example, CYEN, national agencies, media houses, other resource providers, and donor coordinating groups. Here you see now the core users of the network. Those core users in the center, you see the sub-regional focal points. The sub-regional focal points are islands which are basically put in place to take care of regions, right? So in the northwestern sub-region, that is led by Jamaica, and that includes Bahamas, Belize, Haiti, Turks and Caicos, and Caymans. In the eastern sub-region, Antigua and Barbados, Leeds, Anguilla, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, British Virgin Islands. Barbados leads with Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in the southern sub-region, Trinidad leads with Grenada, Guyana, and Suriname. We are also assisted by the amateur radio societies within the region. Here in Barbados, we use the Amateur Radio Society to assist us regionally with communications. They also assist the regional response mechanism teams when they're deployed. The equipment, well, this is what our initial equipment looked like. Mainly analog equipment. We still use some of it. To support the deployment of the teams. And then we've upgraded somewhat to using this is still a part of the equipment also issued to the teams and in process of being updated. Some of the apps that we use would be WinLink, which was a project started by the ITU, and which we are trying to get the islands to use more or less. Some of the other apps, mostly in use by the amateur radio operators. Well, yeah, the amateur radio operators, etc., would be, for instance, the Echolink, as you see there. There are many other apps that we use, which we will speak to. As it is now, in most cases, we've upgraded in along with the digital transformation side, we've upgraded a lot of our equipment to basically be able to connect directly to the internet without having to use the terrestrial infrastructure. And you would understand the reason why behind that. Satellite internet solutions, we're using Starlink. We're looking at standalone LTE network solutions. Our RF section, we're using software-defined radios. We are working on early warning systems, IP-based solutions, again, RF over IP or radio over IP, and we're looking at we're using green energy solutions as well. Having made these upgrades and pending changes, we have to anticipate an increase in the efficiency of our operations. We've already started to see greater situational awareness and more effective evidence-based decision making. In terms of training, we conduct, with the advent of all this equipment, we conduct training to ensure that persons being deployed with this equipment can handle it. We also look at the equipment. The equipment is more or less is very simple to use, and therefore it makes the training a lot easier as well. So as you can see here, some of the equipment being used by some of the guys, some of the training being conducted. Some of the training would have been conducted by ISOC, the Barbados chapter. We also run exercises, training exercises, and a lot of this training, and a lot of these exercises are run on the internet. Right? We run into exercises like, for instance, something called Region RAP, exercise Region RAP, where we test the telecommunication systems around the region. We use scenarios where there is no access to the internet, where there is access to the internet, where there is no access to the RF, the radio frequencies, right? So to ensure that the teams are put in positions where in positions which they could come across as a result of a disaster or a hazard. In terms of internet access, like I said before, most of our equipment can directly access the internet in some form or fashion. And again, we've put things in place so that we can make that access possible for the teams on the ground without having the terrestrial infrastructure in place. Because there's a lot of instances where we go into these kind of situations. We found that most companies now, most of the telecoms companies are coming back online a lot quicker. So again, this helps to ensure that we have that communication capacity in the time that they are not. available. All right, so we use basically then we use the internet for connectivity to ensure that we can regionally and internationally collaborate with our partners to help us to build our situational awareness or keep us on our toes where information is coming. Information is always flowing back and forth, and we need to have that information so that we can stay on top of the game. To remote collaboration, and that also includes programming, working with other agencies, doing research, education and training. We run a lot of courses, all courses online. We're using the smart energy and resource management and for data sharing. Again, these smart energy items that we use are also able to connect to the internet. And for data sharing and processing, we find that that is now a um, major point with us, especially now that we are using a lot of geospatial um, information. And that's it for my presentation. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. It's very important. I know most of us may not be aware of the different strategies in place, the different methods that you use in terms of both pre, post, as well as during disaster scenarios and situations. And of course, it's good to see that our regional body is, stepping up as it relates to satellite, whether it be satellite technologies, and ensuring that, even during our post or pre, that we are still connected and can carry out activities. So thank you so much for that. And also thank you for the overview as it relates to the work of CDEMA. Now, before we move any further, there is a question we have online. So I'll pose one question to you. And this is from the Secretary General. Can you tell us a little bit more about CDEMA's work and relationship with Starlink? Before you start, I can add I was part of one of the training sessions that was held last year. I think it was last year, either November, December, where Starlink was introduced through the Internet Society's foundation, where they would have sponsored some of the equipment. But I'll let you, Courtney, speak a little more about that. Over to you.
Okay, all right. We've been following my supervisor and I. We've been following Starlink from since from 2019. Yes, about around 2019, and we continue to follow it and look at to see how it has developed in 2022, late 2022. We would have reached out to our executive director would have spoken to someone at Starlink, a representative, and I then reached out to that representative. It started it has become a good partnership, and they say a partnership in a wide sense. um, we have not had any issues per se with Starlink. The the we also in the first instance we were given test kits. We were given test kits and we had used the test kits. The Starlink was it was amazing in comparison to what was being used at the point in time, and it fit right into our role. We have, as indicated before, the teams that we send out. It is a pain
Courtney, are you still with us? All right, it seems that we've lost Courtney. So we'll give him a little bit to rejoin. So what we'll do, we'll segue and we'll recycle, come back to that question, Rodney, and to yours also, Jason. But what we'll do, we'll recycle and we will speak with our next panelist this morning, Ms. Shannon Weeks, who is the National Coordinator for CYEN. Ms. Weeks, good morning. Can you just share a little bit more about, the work of CYEN and your role here as National Coordinator? So over to you and good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks for having CYEN here at this forum this morning. CYEN, or the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, is a regional organization, and we have 15 chapters ranging from Belize right back down to Suriname. And I'm the national coordinator for the chapter here in Barbados. Essentially, what we try to do as a regional organization is to get young people from the Caribbean involved, engaged, and participating in environmental matters, as well as sustainable development. And we operate essentially with 6 pillars in mind, and these are education, awareness, participation, engagement, advocacy, and lobbying. And we have 6 focus areas, which include climate change, biodiversity, sustainable land management, integrated water resource management, coastal marine resource management. And we also focus on multilateral agreements, such as the ESCAZO agreement. And essentially, we do this through non-formal education, not only targeting the youth that are attached to organizations and schools, but we also try to get those who are unattached as well. And we also focus heavily on experiential learning, where our young people, get the experience through hands-on activities. So they'll get skills that are not necessarily taught in schools or at universities, such as proposal writing, budgeting, project planning, and implementation, essentially. My role as the national coordinator here in Barbados is essentially to manage the day-to-day activities of the chapter and the operations. And just to make sure everything, all the activities and programs that we have planned are executed to the best of our ability.
So thank you for that, Ms. Weeks, that introduction. I see someone in the chat clapping off and applauding. CYEN does great work. So thank you for that introduction. So what I want to ask you, tell us, how has the internet either impacted for good or impacted for bad in terms of how you share awareness, create engagement around environmental protection, as well as climate change? How is that working for you, and what are some of the strategies that you are using to help you with that engagement and awareness building?
Right. So with the use of the internet, we are able to reach a wider target audience, not only persons in Barbados or the Caribbean, but also persons globally, where we are able to collaborate with potential, partners from, the international level or the regional level. The internet also allows us to have a strong online presence through our website and then our various social media platforms from the different chapters of the organization. We also are able to provide real-time updates to those persons who would, follow the organization. So in terms of our work, we be able to share these things as they occur or as they are occurring, as well as, share environmental matters and sustainable development issues that are impacting the region, not just only in Barbados, but also, places like St. Vincent, also St. Lucia, these different things. Additionally, we are also able to host campaigns online, as well as, in addition to the ones we're having in person. Some of the strategies that we are utilizing, or the platforms that we're utilizing, would be our website. We have a website, CYEN.org, where we post all of our activities that the different chapters are undertaking, so persons could see the wonderful work that we're doing. share not project proposals, projects that we've done before, reports from projects. We post those on the website as well. We also utilize platforms like Zoom to host like various webinars which seek to educate, young people of the Caribbean region and persons from the international sphere about environmental matters, especially how these are affecting the Caribbean region. We also use social media such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. And obviously, we have learned to tailor our content to these platforms. We know like Instagram persons are just there to like kind of scroll. Some people don't like to read. So we've, tailored our content to like be in like bullet points where it's easy to read for persons, scrolling, make it a bit like flashy so that they're like, okay, this has, this seems like something I should be attracted to or something that I need to, read or take heed towards, those kind of things. We also had a podcast recently this year called the In-Betweenity, the Green Pod. We talked about different environmental matters such as renewable energy. We talked about the ESCAZO agreement. And we also talked about the Conference of the Parties as well. And that is just some of the ways that we utilize the internet.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like you you are not necessarily a full inclusive, because I know you do in-person events as well.
Yes.
But it is good to hear that you are utilizing it to share. So when there's the good sharing as it relates to information, then there's the bad sharing, not from you, but from others.
Yes.
So can you tell us, are there any strategies that you have in place, any things you do to help to combat misinformation about specifically climate matters or climate issues? Because of course we live it firsthand. I'm going to talk a little bit more with Courtney about that shortly, but it's something we experience, something we face, we see it, we live it, we hear it. It wets us, it floods the roads, it washes our cars away. We're experiencing it, not even to say every year, as you would normally hear a person say every year in the hurricane season. It's no going past that. It's not only hurricane season now. Or it doesn't have to be a hurricane for us to experience strange weather events. So is there any campaigns, is there anything you're doing in terms of combating that misinformation? Or in general, how do you find the misinformation around the climate change?
All right, so it is difficult to, try to combat the misinformation because persons, have their own beliefs. So some people believe that climate change is not real. So no matter how much you, tell them and you show them the scientific facts, they, still have they still hold very strong that, climate change is not real. And I think you cannot persuade those kind of people as much as we would like to. But we essentially are campaigns, programs, trying to educate young people about climate change with as much of using data to help, back our stuff. I know this year here in Barbados, we did some research with an intern from Chicago, University of Chicago, where we were doing community talks with young people around Barbados. And essentially, it was a survey trying to, gauge what they know about climate change and climate justice. But we were doing it like informally so that they don't have to fill out, questionnaires. It's like, sitting down, having a discussion, trying to gauge what they know. And then at the end of the conversation, we had a session where we would clear any misconceptions that, we would have noticed coming up throughout the conversations and that kind of stuff. So that's one way that we are. Well, another way we are helping with, combating the misinformation, sharing, helping persons to see or to connect the experiences that we live to climate change. As you said, hurricanes, the flash floods, such as Hurricane Tammy as well, helping persons to realize this is just not normal. This is, because of climate change.
So you mentioned a very, very important point there, just known as around data and using data to help back some of the messages that we are sharing, and to give a firmer case as to what we are saying and what we are seeing. What I want to do now is I want to um, just segue a little bit back over to Courtney. Courtney, in terms of you were speaking a little bit just now about your partnerships, which enables you to be connected throughout these weather events. And Starlink, one of the opportunities for us to utilize a different approach to connectivity, whether it's post, pre, during weather events or activities. So I want to hand back over to you to discuss that part a little bit more. So what's the partnership like? What's the discussions you're having with Starlink, and where do you see it going in future, enabling us in the region to, whether it be collect data during those climate events like Shannon is speaking about, or just generally helping us remain connected in climate events. So over to you, Courtney.
Okay, good. So in terms of connectivity, yes, I can see going forward, I can see this. We already know it's a game changer, and it is one of those from the emergency telecommunications aspect. The amount of positives, the amount of positives that we have gained already are in short, when the last few hurricanes storms that passed, we wouldn't have taken down this Starlink because as there was no need to. Um, the like I just said, we're using green energy sources now, and those green energy sources we can use within the office. So there's no need to have a generator on the outside. We can power those Starlinks without that, as opposed to having full full view of the sky. Um, Not that it is definitely required, but we find that the is not necessarily 100% needed. So again, with the usual satellite communications, cloud cover creates an issue. In this case, Starlink, we've had no issues using the Starlink. The relationship with Starlink, as asked earlier, has been very good. We've had no issues with them. We've worked with them. They have always been very forward with information. Uh, the We've also worked alongside the Barbados Telecoms unit with them, and it has made it a lot easier to have that here in the island. In terms of accessibility, downtime, for instance, it is very resilient. It's very resilient. We use it as at the office. We use it as our backup to the terrestrial services, and so far it has held up. It has performed quite well. I wouldn't say it is the best. Not saying that it's the best, but it's performed quite well. In terms of deployment in the field to different islands, the connectivity again is good. So we can see it being deployed to another island that has no internet connectivity, and that team setting up and being able to get back to us within 10 to 15 minutes of landing in the operational area. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for that, Courtney. So what I want to do now, since we are hearing now, how resilient it is, how enabling it is in terms of operational and emergency management and so on, I want to throw out a general question to both of you. And I'm going to start with Shannon first. Do you see benefit and value from the CYEN's position on communicating during? So I'm going to speak about the during period. Do you see benefit of using the internet to communicate with, whether it be citizens during a weather event. So, we talk about where is the all clear, we talk about whether it's um, just sharing information about what is going on within your geographic location. So from your perspective and CYEN's perspective, do you see value in ensuring that Barbados in general, all persons still have that connectivity to internet? I know, and before you answer, um, for me, in the context of an emergency, the radio is tuned up to all. The batteries are in the radio, and we are all tuned in. We're listening. We're hearing. There's a metal blowing across. So persons in the calling programs and so on. So we're all familiar with that. So do you see this game-changing technology such as Starlink? Um, should we make that shift from radio to internet? Should we maintain both? What are your thoughts?
We definitely see the value in, having the internet during storms and, weather conditions. I think we can maintain both radio and Starlink. Because some persons, they may prefer to use radio as their, first means of getting information out there. I would say that we here at CYEN, as a regional organization, we have the various chapters, and therefore Barbados is always the first one to be affected or have the potential to be affected by these weather conditions. And we are always sharing, with our members updates on like weather systems that could possibly affect us if they are affecting us. And then we would also be tuned in, to our regional counterparts as well to see what is the situation with them over there as well. So if it wasn't for the radio, the internet, we wouldn't be able to, follow or have like, real-time updates of the situation that is going on, not only in Barbados, but, with our colleagues in different islands as well.
So I'm going to pose the same question to you, Courtney. But before you chip in, I just want to add on something to what you're saying, Shannon. The lack of information always breeds some level of whether it be fear, misinformation. It breeds, what we will call the background talk or backyard talk. So I think that access and maintaining that access to free-flowing information, and it's also something that we often forget. Many of us in the Caribbean have relatives in other islands, relatives, friends, something we often overlook. And we would want to hear what's going on in these other islands, whether it be to reach out, whether it be to start preparing if you know something has occurred, start preparing to, whenever it's capable to send goods and so on. So I think those elements are critical. Whether or not the event may have passed here, we still have our brothers and sisters in the other islands that we're looking over. Courtney, so I'm going to have over to you and I'm going to ask you the same question. Your thoughts? Do we maintain one? Do we maintain both? Do we switch to one over the other? We know Starlink using satellite type approaches to technology. Yes, a radio tower could probably be impacted or, blown down or struck by something or simply lose some type of power. But what are your thoughts? Should we keep both? Should we use one? Over to you for your thoughts.
Okay, coming from a military background, I always preach redundancy to the redundancy to the redundancy to the redundancy. If we can maintain all, so be it. Radio has its use, definitely. Like I said, we partner with the Amateur Radio Society. The Amateur Radio Society, although it operates obviously in the amateur bands. We at CDEMA, we operate in the commercial bands. So we, as part of our situational awareness, there's a lot of information that comes in via the amateur radio band. However, we still, at CDEMA, all information that we process is mainly coming from the national level, the National Disaster Management Offices, and that's basically the clearinghouse at the local end, right? So unless that information is cleared at the local end, we don't put it out there. All right, so that is one of our strong points. When it gets to our level, again, we don't share that information unless it has been cleared by the national offices. Um, we still need to have internet during the period of storms. I mean, yeah, it has its negatives and positives, but again, from a military background and bring it over to disaster management, we try to use equipment which can sustain an event or most events, all right? As opposed to using big fancy antennas, we use wire, for instance, all right? So again, with Starlink has a very small footprint in comparison to most other devices, all right? So that's how we look at that part. Um, so yeah, and we still have to be coordinating with international agencies during that time. We still have to maintain that situational awareness. We still have to ensure that we get the information up to the other participating states so that they can make their public aware if necessary, or they can make um, persons who we will need for the teams aware of the situation and put them in place so that if they're required for deployment afterwards, they're available. We still need to do damage assessments, etc. Right. So yes, I can see the need for the internet, access to the internet during an event. Um, Definitely, again, redundancy upon redundancy upon redundancy, and the in terms of the information security, yes, that is a definite must for us, especially when it comes to the sovereignty of states.
Thank you so much for that response, Courtney. And I'm going to add something to what you're saying, something that I've seen advertising on TV. They call it hurricane ready Wi-Fi. I've seen it advertising, and I'm like, hurricane ready Wi-Fi, and they're boasting, they're literally boasting that not even a hurricane can take down our internet infrastructure and system. I think it is Verizon. I could be wrong, but I think it is Verizon. I think there's a hurricane ready Wi-Fi that I see them promoting. So there is that move, it seems, and push to remain connected during weather events. So what I'm going to move now, and I want to move a bit closer to a point Ms. Weeks made earlier about this is about data now, about weather data, weather information, you know. So I I don't have a background in climate studies or anything. So I worked a little bit with some systems as a programmer, but I'm not a. What I'll tell you is that, and I'm going to be a little controversial now. Whenever I hear a system is approaching, the first thing you do is build up windy.com. That's the first thing I bring up, and they start to looking and I try to figure out, you know, this thing it hit me and it hit me, I peeping and looking to see if it's gonna hit, you know, what's gonna happen. And I automatically turn into uncertified and unqualified meteorologist. So my question now comes to the data end of it. And I know we're not meteorologists here, but what I want to open up is for a discussion on the data and the use of the data. So from the perspective of CDEMA just shared, they may have information, but it has to be cleared at the national level, which makes sense. And so what I want to open up, and this is the question I'm going to frame here now. How do we better utilize the data that we have, and how do we better communicate it? So on my end, do we think that we get the information in a format that we can easily use to make decisions? I draw an example. Sometimes I'll be sitting and I gotta search through Instagram and I may see, okay, wait, there's flash flood. I didn't even know. I know there's tools like CapCap and other type of tools. Do we see a space? So the question here is, do we see a space for additional, whether it be tools, whether it be information platforms? So, you know, we have the BMS, CDEMA also there, but we have the BMS that shares the information. But do we see opportunities, whether it be for applications, different tools, which brings a simplification of alerts, alerting to the population. And we have to remember, so we have CapCap, which is an app, but there may be persons who just have a cell phone that can only accept text messages. And there is that. And I think we sometimes forget text messages. Some persons still use text messages, right? Is there a need for a system which considers wider populace to be able to share alerts and information on whether it be weather events, approaching systems in a simplified way so that our population understands and are readily aware? Shannon, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. As you said, simplified is very important. Sometimes I know that we as professionals, when we speak to persons who may not be in the sphere, we could speak in our professional languages, and then they're like, "What are you talking about?" We do not understand. So I think being simplified in our messaging is important. I think that we can, or there can be a system where it is inclusive, as you said, to like text. I know on Telegram you could subscribe to like channels. I think on WhatsApp as well. There's also this feature for channels. Not sure if local channels will be on there, but if persons could subscribe to channels and you get updates readily, because not everybody's on Instagram, everybody's on Facebook, not everybody listens to the radio, and those kind of things, or may have access to these things when like conferences or broadcasts are being made. So I think that some inclusive system could be put in place that utilize the various channels that we have to get to everybody, even those persons who may like be shut-ins, who may not have access to radio, who may not have access to the internet. How do we get them to be more alert of these things if nobody's home with them, to let them know what's going on as well?
Thank you so much for that, Shannon. I'm going to hand over to Courtney, and then we're going to have we're going to take some questions. But just before I do hand over to Courtney, I'm going to throw in another spin here. And I think it was about 3 weeks ago where, or 4 weeks, could be 4 weeks ago, when we had a stay inside alert issued by VMS as it relates to increased lightning activity. And I don't know about both of you, but I've never experienced that before. And I mean, it wasn't something we had planned. It wasn't something, so something like that. If I'm not connected to Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm not on any of these things, I have absolutely no way. Because if I'm a person that just reads the newspaper, of course, what happens? The newspaper coming out tomorrow. The newspaper are having that information. So yeah, you see where we are. Where if it is that there's this increase in activity and instant activity that's occurring, and you have to issue no instant alerts. We need to find better ways of connecting with persons and ensuring we are reaching, because that's the other thing, reaching persons. Because something is staying inside alert in terms of lightning and so on. That's something that you need to get out to most persons, because if they're not listening, they're not. If you're in an office, fine, people might tell you if you're not on. But as you said, you're home alone, someone who's disabled and so on, we're going to have some challenges. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Courtney, for your thoughts on this, and then I'll open the floor for some questions. So Courtney, your thoughts on this?
Okay. I agree with most of what Shannon has said. I think we need to bear in mind now, CDEMA is actively working on looking at early warning systems and looking at early warning systems throughout these at the international stage. There are a lot that we have trialed, and in a lot of instances, they do have some obstacles that we still have to deal with at some point in time. But besides that, with the way how technology is going, as it relates to persons who are stay at home, um, differently able, etc. With the advent of the Internet of Things, we may see some early warning systems that, well, hopefully we will see some early warning systems that take advantage of the use of the Internet of Things to help um, to get that message out there to persons in such a position.
Thank you for that, Courtney. And yes, so again, another use, implementation of another type of technology which could be used, and we're looking on the lines of IoT and IoT systems to be able to support both, because the IoT systems can work on both the data collection end, can work on the transmission end and information sharing end. So that's great information, Courtney, and I'm sure that's something that we can look out for, and perhaps something, if possible, ISOC, in terms of whether it be ISOC global, local chapter, probably even CTU can be at the table as well when those discussions start to occur. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Lance now. It seems like Lance, I believe you had a comment or a question. So I'm going to hand over to you, Lance, and then we're going to take some questions from the chat. So Lance?
Yeah, Shamar. I was only gonna, well, first I was gonna share an experience because along with my tech background, I'm a beekeeper. And I say about a year and a half ago, we had tremendous flooding here. And I don't know if you're familiar with Guyana, with the dams and the cocas and the polders and stuff like that. And one of the things was one of our larger creeks had started to overflow since the previous December, and we didn't know. And nobody went to the back there. And then what happened is that by the time the rainy season came, so the water being high already and added to the rain, there was overtopping on the earthen dams, and quite a few of us lost beehives as a result of the water coming in. And you know, it would have been, I mean, there are other challenges, but you know, we couldn't help but think if we had some kind of IoT solution that would have been there to you know, give us an idea of the level of the water in December, so we could have done some precautionary things, mitigation things and stuff like that. So certainly those tools are needed. In our case, they'll have to be self-powered, of course, because some of those areas just don't have any electricity whatsoever. So there are other things that we're going to have to look at, but certainly early warning systems should be in place. And most importantly, they should be harmonized. I'd like to see one data set that is coming from, and the only thing we're doing is that we're using all the tools to be the front end, either collecting that data and distributing it however it is. So for example, the text stuff could go into your local PSTN, and that's the way those messages could be sent. And then there are those, that be sent either via the internet, via cell networks, what have you. But it should be one notification portal handling all that traffic. One, tracking the events as they come along and distribute it accordingly. I think what happens, and even here, is that we tend to do different applications, and they all come sometimes with different sources depending on the agency and stuff like that. So really, we should have, if we're going to think through this, let's put the policy behind it as well to make sure that you've got, one or two authoritative sources, and they're the ones that are going to distribute the data accordingly. But I think the tools are there. It could be done. Of course, finance is everything, but certainly if we plan it, we should be able to put in the kind of systems that we need. That's me.
Thank you so much for that, Lance. And I am a huge advocate of IoT systems, sensor systems. I'm a huge advocate of it. And I tell you the funny thing about IoT systems. Some systems you can get for under $100. Of course, it's not commercial. open source, but perhaps whether you want to have a water flow sensor or you want to have a height and water height sensor with a simple ultrasonic sensor, something as simple as that could be done under $100. So what I'm saying is that I think that we need a general movement towards remote monitoring, remote sensing. I think we need to look into those systems, particularly in remote areas, because someone may not go in that area for months. Someone may not go in that area at all for whatever reason. And remote monitoring is critical. Even here in Barbados, if you're going to have these flash floods, these flash situations, remote monitoring around bridges, around areas where we know are flood areas that can impact persons who live in an area, I think having that information is critical to ensure that we have, you know, the information readily to hand and not having someone to go out there and, you know, constantly look. So this question, we have a question here going specifically to CDEMA. And so Courtney, here's a question for you. Is there a role that ICT professionals, particularly their civil society-based organizations such as an ISOC and so on, is there a role that they can play in CDEMA's level of disaster preparedness? So I can add on a piece of that. As I mentioned earlier, we did attend a training where we learned how to use whether it be sat phones, both the Starlink, we let that began, so on. But is there a greater role that civil society organizations, so I know ISOC is mentioned, but we have organizations such as CYEN. Do you see a role that we can play in disaster preparedness from CDEMA's perspective? So over to you.
There are so many. Like you said, you've already assisted us in terms of providing us with information, equipment that has changed the ball game. Training for our regional members. You can also assist us in terms of events like this, symposiums like this, seminars and workshops. You have the space, and we can collaborate on those spaces and get the message, help to get the message out there to public. In terms of technical assistance, research and publication, can assist us in capacity building. We have a database to which we add persons with special skills. Obviously, those skills would only be required as per request from states. But there's always that database. In that database, you could find, for instance, you could find persons who deal with repairing fiber, maybe Cantor, Carolet, agencies such as those can help us with public awareness. I mentioned that earlier, public awareness campaigns, infrastructure resilience projects. We can help with those at the national level as well. So many different areas. Emergency response platforms, resource mobilization, collaborative research and innovation. So many areas. It's just a matter of reaching out to us, we reaching out to you, and things can happen.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. And as I mentioned, you know, there's starting of a collaboration from the Internet Society's foundation level, and on our end in terms of holding of sessions, whether it be having just open forums of discussions like this is definitely a way we will continue to do, as well as exploring other opportunities from ISOC's perspective in terms of partnership and so on. I will see a question from Jason, but I just want to hear from Shannon on this. Shannon, from what Courtney just shared, any thoughts on this? How do you see CYEN potentially playing a further role, whether it be with CDEMA, with us, ISOC, in terms of whether it be sessions, whether it be awareness building, or where do you see CYEN playing a greater role, whether it be in disaster preparedness or even just the discussions?
I agree with everything that Courtney would have said. Here at CYEN, we, do a lot of workshops, webinars, symposiums with different entities. So like the Barbados Water Authority, the 5Cs, Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. So I think, having those about, whether it be about climate change and, how this links to disaster preparedness in terms of becoming more, resilient to weather systems, which are in part are more related to climate change, having those kind of discussions to make persons more aware of these things. He also said like resource sharing and stuff. That is also something, that could be useful as well. Sharing best practices to help, enhance each organization's capacity to address climate change and, to further engage the vulnerable populations effectively. But essentially, everything that he said, I would agree with, and I would say myself.
Thank you so much for that, Shannon. And I look forward to partnering with both of you, or continue to partner with both of you in terms of delivering on that promise. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand over the floor to only 2 more questions we'll take, and then we'll wrap up. Jason, Mr. Hines, over to you for your question or comment, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On the level of regional disaster conferences, which I assume, definitely relays a lot of important information and so on. Pre-pandemic, I recall seeing promotions of some of these things. And just like with our IT conferences, and particularly our international and regional level nonprofit IT conferences, it was at some ritzy venue and some overseas location. And I remember thinking, and this is pre-pandemic years, like before 2019. So I'm not in the field, but I remember thinking a lot of our nonprofit organization ritzy conferences still have a component where we stream the meeting and anyone can freely access it. Now, that might not be exactly the model that your premier regional level disaster conference needs to take. But I certainly think that like some of our methods of having hub locations in a country and having personnel connect rather than everybody flying to the location, if that's not done, I would think that something like that needs to be done unless the pandemic caused a more open type of access. Because I remember not seeing any avenue for that, even though I was sort of interested in having a look in at something that I had seen promoted in that before 2019 period. So just making that comment, and I was thinking that there should be some way that organizations like ours could assist in getting such pertinent information to a wider audience if there was another avenue, given that we do it within our spaces. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment, Jason. And I want to agree. We have a situation where, not everyone is able to fly or travel. So we should advocate for, when possible, because some sessions, of course, are closed sessions, and they have closed sessions or open sessions and so on. But with the open sessions, we should try to, as much as possible, have both in-person and online opportunities for persons to attend these sessions, because, again, as I said, it could be logistically can't travel, it could be timing can't travel, they need to be in the office, they have a a child they need to take care of, these types of things. So in the spirit of being inclusive and all-inclusive, I think it is critically important for us to ensure that we do maintain both in person and generally, and it's something that we can have a discussion at the ISOC level to see how we can, whether it be support, facilitate, or come up with a strategy or plan to address that. So we're at the end of the panel discussion. What I'm going to do is just going to give both Shannon and Courtney 30 seconds just to give a brief wrap up of thoughts or comments that they think we should take away from the panel discussion. So I'm going to start with you first, Shannon. 30 seconds, just give us a brief wrap up of any thoughts or anything you want us specifically to take away from the session today. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for having CYEN be on this panel discussion today. The takeaways I would say is that we all face the same issues. And if we work together, supporting one another in the various ways that we can, I think we could achieve our targets that we have set for our individual organizations to help better, not ourselves, but the general populace of Barbados and by extension, the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Shannon. Seconded, agreed. Together we are stronger, and together we can do much more. Courtney, with that being said, 30 seconds, over to you.
All right, let me say that the internet, we can refer to it as limitless. With the advent of all the 5G, 6G, Internet of Things, AI, satellite internet, etc., and the resources that are consequently made available to us, we need to utilize it, make the populace aware, and help them to be able to utilize it so that we can overall benefit from the use of it.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. So we are at the end of the panel discussion, very robust discussion. And I think we have some key takeaways in terms of continuous partnership, new partnership, looking at ways and piloting ways for us to be able to, one, remain inclusive, increase our reach. But there's also something I want to share from the Internet Society perspective. So the Internet Society, where there's the Internet Society Foundation, there's the Internet Society. Every year, there's a grant program which is opened by Internet Society, which looks at, there's some small grants beyond the net. There are other larger grants that you can apply for under the Internet Society. And coming out of the general discussion that we've had over these last 2 days, starting yesterday with in terms of AI and discussing cybersecurity and sovereignty, and coming over into today, where we are talking now about the climate challenges and the ease of doing business are the ways of using the internet for business. I'm hearing some key things coming out here that could very well qualify for small grants and so on. These opportunities generally go untapped, whether it be from ISOC's perspective, other organizations' perspective. So what I'm doing now is I'm opening an open call for us generally as civil society organizations, individuals. If you have an idea of anything you've heard over these last few days, if you have a thought of anything that you think may be helpful over these last few days that you think could be turned into a grant program, please feel free to reach out to us at ISOC, where we can see how we can form it together. It doesn't have to be a single entity. It doesn't have to be a single person. It could be a group. We can help you frame it. I'll just try an example. Carrie-Ann earlier mentioned some accessibility challenges that she faces as it relates to using the internet, whether it be website, apps. That could be a simple project. How do we upskill and make developers, businesses more aware of some of the challenges that are faced by persons with disabilities? These are some of the things that are coming out of this discussion. And for me, it would be great to have at least one proposal in terms of a grant proposal coming out of the discussions that we have had throughout these last few days. If we don't want a case where, this is just thought and that's I'm trying my hardest to get away from those type of sessions. And as you can see, I'm trying to pull out from some of these sessions, some of the things I think could be grants, some of the things I think we could apply for, if not this year, next year, because I want actionable and key outputs to come out of these sessions that we've been having to ensure that we at least work on so much of the opportunities we have for funding, and we work on so much of the knowledge we have in these groups and the opportunities.